Hello, Bill.
Hey Matt, happy
Hello, everyone
Valentine,
else.
happy Valentine's Day. We are
It's
recording
Valentine's
on Valentine's Day. There's no one I would rather spend 20 minutes with in at 11:30 on a Friday on Valentine's Day than you.
Day. I want to say I can tell that you're being 100% truthful because you're wearing my shirt. So
I
thank
am.
you very much.
I am. I know this is great podcasting content, but I am wearing an olive green low budget logistics shirt. I just
Well,
got it in from our friends at Amplifier. It
you're
it
still
fits.
sponsored this podcast.
It looks great. Yep.
Fits good, looks great. Repping
I'm
the business. So
I'm feeling good. I'm wearing my parabola hoodie too, so I'm just like a walking billboard today.
you're it's almost like you just came out of Manifest with all of the swag. Although I know that neither of us went there, but apparently everyone else that we did go.
Yeah, everybody's talking about Manifest. I've never, I haven't, yeah, I wasn't there this year. I've never been. I honestly don't really know much about what it's about. But just apparently I missed out a lot. I'm having a little bit of FOMO right now.
I heard there were puppies there.
What?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, puppies and supply chain, they go together like peanut butter and jelly, like carrots and peas.
Well, now I really have FOMO. I want to go to. I've never been to a convention where there are puppies before.
You're not going to the right convention.
No, I go to plenty of board game conventions, that's like
Yeah,
that's pretty good for me. But there have never been any puppies at those.
that's fun. Yeah,
That
I had a friend who went. She was asking me who I should meet. I recommended several people. She had a great time. And then my coworkers were like, "Hey, do you just know everybody in this industry?" And I went, "I know a lot of people in this industry." And then they asked, "Have you ever met any of them like in real life?" And I went, "Actually, surprisingly, I have. I've worked with a lot of people. It's a large but very small world."
indeed.
All right, so
Weirdly, we've never met in person. I feel like
you know,
it probably says something about the quality of the podcast. I mean, but really,
I mean,
but
two spirits so kindred as ours. You don't need to be in person with one another. We're always here together every other week when we can sort our schedules out and do this.
that's a lovely sentiment on Valentine's Day.
All right, should we get into it now that we've done enough chatter?
Let's get into it. I think you wanted to talk about tariffs. You actually wanted to do like a current event, which is I have to say like a little off brand for us, right? Bullship,
Super.
the everything you don't need to know about supply chain, but people need to know about tariffs these days.
We should. Yeah, it's time to finally discuss it. We're several weeks into this whole ordeal. Um, so tariffs as a thing. Broadly, they are taxes, you could call them. They're for lack of a better term, really a penalty for making stuff in some other country. That's effectively what's happening. You have to pay the government some amount of money to bring your goods into this country. It's a whole deal. Um, we'll get into like how they're assessed in a little bit,
Oh
but just
boy.
know like
Oh boy. Are you going to talk about HTS codes?
that's how they're assessed. So yes, that's how we're gonna talk about that.
One of Matt's very favorite topics. I can't wait.
So a tariff, right, is for those who don't know, right? I'm talking to the freight brokers out there who only move domestic stuff. Uh, a tariff is based off of an HTS code, which we'll get to. It's basically you telling the government, "Hey, this is the thing that I'm bringing in to your country. I'd like to pay to get it in, and then here's where I made that item." Now, there's a lot of like things that go into that of like what is the definition of made? Because you can assemble something and then it becomes something else. That's its whole deal. If this is a fun one, if you're bringing in something that was at one point alive, the country of origin, you have two different countries of origin. One for like the thing where it was made, and the other for like where that thing was born, and then you know didn't continue to live.
You can say it, Matt. Our podcast is called Bullship. I mean, we're
There you go.
practically swearing. So I think you can say the word killed here. Yes.
So I know that because I used to make. Well, I didn't make jewelry. I don't wear jewelry. I used to work for a company who made jewelry, and we had like seashells, and that sort of stuff. We had abalone shell, and we always had two different countries of origin. The like origin of the jewelry itself, because where that was made was important, and then where that abalone began its life was a different country of origin.
Pause there a second, because this is not supply chain. This is just my curiosity, because whenever I see like seashell related jewelry, I grew up on the water,
Yeah.
and so I just assumed that someone was like walking around the beach looking for nice looking shells. But what I'm hearing you say is that they are raising these abalone for their shells
Yes.
and then slaughtering them potentially in a different country.
Can you slaughter a mollusk? Is that a thing?
For lack of a better term, I mean, what a
Yeah. Where they became unalived. Yeah. Yes.
when I make steamers, I don't say that I'm slaughtering them. I'm just steaming the clams, right? So
Bill,
I don't know how they're getting the dead abalone or making the abalone dead and getting them out of the shell. I'm very curious about this now.
Bill, I'm sorry. You really threw me off the vibe there when you said when I make steamers, because in my jargon for steamers,
Okay,
different thing.
okay, okay. Wait, quick definition. This
Thank
is
you.
not an HTS code definition. A steamer, where I live in New England, is a steamed clam. It is a particular kind of clam that we typically steam and eat, and they're delicious. One of my favorite summertime meals. But yes, okay. When I make steamers, I'm talking about cooking clams. I don't even know what you're thinking about, Matt.
I
But
think
I'm just
everyone
cooking clams.
who's watching or listening to this podcast knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not going to continue to comment on it, especially in light of our last podcast where you talked about your son walking around without pants on in the cold. I'm We're not going to touch it. I'm going to move on. We're going to leave
Well,
that.
many listeners who didn't listen to that podcast, first of all, I don't blame you. Second of all, my son was wearing shorts. He was not walking around without anything. He was wearing shorts, not pants, in cold weather. So,
In the cold
yes.
water. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for bringing
Yes.
that one up too, Matt. We're just going to spend this whole podcast just with disclaiming all the weird stuff that we've said.
You know, if Massachusetts would just be less weird, then like we would continue on.
You haven't, if you think that's weird, then you have not had steamers with butter. They are delicious.
Stop saying steamers. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, when animals like that are typically farmed, um, and if they are, yeah, so there's like different things. So if you bring stuff in, there are different government agencies that get involved with it. One time we made jewelry out of chicken feathers. Don't ask me why. It was a thing because fashion. The USDA got involved in that, and they had to like actually allow stuff to get cleared into the country. So we were talking to customs and USDA. And these are different governmental agencies who monitor and make sure like you're not going to bring anything that's bad, that's harmful into the country. People that I was talking to was the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service because of like what we were bringing in. Again, all of our stuff was farmed, but there's a third like tier um, for endangered animals, or here's a fun one: species. So like wood can be endangered, and if you make a like table out of like super expensive wood, typically that wood is extremely rare, typically endangered, and there have to be certain documents and paperwork to go along with it. So the most common that probably everyone, at least from my neck of the woods, is familiar with is crocodile boots or gator skin boots. When like obviously alligators, crocodiles are endangered species, you have to like prove that the the hide on your boots was from a farmed animal. It was not wild caught. And so like there's lots of documentation that has to go around to prove like, hey, this thing lived a good life, it had a great time, it was killed mercifully, so on and so forth.
So knowing how supply chains work and how chaotic and messy most supply chain organizations are, it boggles my mind that that paperwork can go from the source of the point of origin to through the government to wherever it needs to go successfully in any manner. It just blows my mind.
It is astounding, but it does happen. It is like we 100% have figured out the way to do this. But yes, those documents physically change hands across the globe. It's a whole thing. I
And
agree. It's wild.
are they still paper documents or are they digital now?
We generally get two copies. So we get a digital copy that moves quickly and does all the clearance, and then we have a physical backup of those items.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. That's not what we're talking about today, though, Bill.
No, of course not.
Tariffs. Getting off on a tangent. But because we're at our halfway point, if you do have some digital documents that you might want to, move around the globe, is there maybe a solution that could potentially help us with that?
Why, yes, there is, Matt. It's funny you ask, and also just a remarkably good segue. Congratulations on that one.
Good at this.
Yes, and I know what company you're thinking of, what platform. It is Parabola, the spreadsheet alternative, and our sponsor this week.
And fantastic sweatshirt maker.
Yes, really comfortable hoodie. I wear this one all the time. Though it must be said, they're not known as much for their hoodies as they are for their data platform, which is really great. And so, Matt, to talk about this, I'm going to admit to something to you that I haven't admitted to anyone else today. And that is, I used to be an Excel jockey. There wasn't a data problem. There wasn't, I know, I'm ashamed to say it almost, but it's true. There wasn't a data problem that I didn't think I could solve with Excel. And you know me, I don't do that anymore, right? But at the time, I was writing all kinds of crazy lookups, huge formulas, VBA, tab after tab after tab. It worked great until it didn't, right? All those files, they caught up to me. They got bigger and bigger. They took off on a life of their own. I was spending all my time just maintaining those files. Fortunately, I don't have to do that anymore. Because with Parabola, I kind of automate all of that. No more clunky manual files that crash every time you try to open them. No more hours spent like copy pasting, filling in those formulas, trying to figure out what column was accidentally deleted that's throwing off my VBA. None of that nonsense anymore. Parabola has this great, easy to use interface. I just drag and drop the data steps I want to take, set my schedule, and the data just flows. And speaking of those documents, you were thinking of their PDF parser. They've got this really cool AI PDF parser. So I don't even have to.
Did you say AI?
It is AI, yes.
What a buzzword we're using.
I know. I know. We've fallen for the buzz.
I would love. There's so many AI tools I would love to have. I think this is a fantastic.
It is super cool, but actually, like the Parabola, so there's a lot of like garbage AI out there where they just slap AI to call it AI so that people buy it and then realize, oh, I can't do anything with this. This PDF parser is not that. It is actually super practical and useful. You feed it like a bill of lading or a packing slip or an invoice or something, right? Some kind of PDF, and we all get those PDFs all the time. You feed it into Parabola, it parses it for you, transforms it from useless PDF into nice, tidy data table that you can then process downstream. It's a really cool tool, super, super useful. No more manually entering data from your PDFs or like physical copies into your ERP. You just plug it all into Parabola, and Parabola does it. It's really awesome.
Thank you so much, Parabola.
Thank you, Parabola.
If you want to give me a hoodie, I like hoodies.
They didn't give you a hoodie?
No,
we should do something about that. They should. We've been plugging them for weeks here. And goodness knows how many people have listened to those plugs, right?
Dozens, Bill. Dozens.
I was going to say less, but you've seen the numbers, not me.
Because I do all the editing back end. Anyways, thank you so much, Parabola. Maybe we'll get Parabola to actually do something for this podcast, on the back end. They do a lot for us on the front end, the back end.
Like give Matt a hoodie.
That's really why I'm a podcaster. Anyway, so back to our earlier subject of tariffs.
Yeah.
Now, tariffs are in the news because the Trump administration has announced tariffs on everything from China. Now, yeah, 10% tariffs, everything from China. Now, the way that they're doing this is kind of interesting because they're adding a new HTS code into the list of codes. So
look up, folks. He's talking about HTS codes. This could be a long one. No.
now, HTS stands for Harmonized Tariff Service. This is a global initiative where the first 6 of 10 numbers indicates the same type of thing at every country that you're going to, right? So the same thing in the U.S. is the same thing in the U.K., EU, Japan, China, Australia. They're all the same, right? So it makes it very easy. The complication is knowing exactly what the thing is that you're trying to tell the government you owe them money for.
Which is pretty amazing because there's basically they've got a code for every possible thing, sort of, that you could import into the country. Right. I know there's no way to actually cover everything, but
it gets exceptionally complicated, Bill.
Sure.
Now here's a fun question, Bill. What is a potato a vegetable? What would you classify that as?
So I'm really glad you asked this question. We actually were having this conversation earlier. I think a potato is definitively a vegetable. I suspect you maybe are going to tell me that I'm wrong from an HTS code perspective.
No, I vehemently disagree that a potato is not a vegetable. It is, because if a potato is a vegetable, then that would make potato chips and French fries a salad. And I will not abide that.
I don't even know where to begin. Do we go down the tangent of talking about salads, or do we? So actually, before we do that, I will, because I knew we were going to be talking about tariffs, and so I was, and I know HTS codes are just bizarre and nonsensical in many cases, and so I started kind of poking around, and I found some really fun tariffs from almost like historical tariffs, and one of them comes from the late 1800s. Back then, vegetables were taxed much higher than fruit.
Okay.
And this led to this court case where some importer was arguing that tomatoes were a fruit.
Yes.
Which actually they are. But the Supreme Court ruled in 1893, Nix versus Hedden, that tomatoes are legally vegetables.
What?
I know, right?
Because, okay, this argument, potatoes as a vegetable, have been a thing in my office for weeks now. We have been just roiling around this because they're like, no, anything that comes from the ground is a vegetable. I'm like, no, it's not, because that would make popcorn a vegetable. That would make cotton a vegetable, and that therefore your clothes are also vegetable. No, I disagree with that statement.
Wait. Cotton is not. You do not eat cotton. Okay, so
you can.
Cottonseed oil. Okay, fine. But so, and that's actually interesting. We'll have to talk
I've
about
had weeks of discussions about this, Bill, amongst getting actual work done. But don't challenge me on this. A potato is not a vegetable.
So botanically,
sure.
Yes. No. Okay. Botanically, a vegetable comes from any part other than the flower of the plant. This is true.
Okay, so then are squash flowers a vegetable, or are they a fruit, Bill?
Squash is a fruit. It comes from a flower. Oh, squash flower?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I know it's a good question, Bill.
I can't answer that one. I'm not an expert. I just Googled it the other day because you started texting me this nonsense about a bowl of French fries with ketchup being a salad, which is definitely not.
It is. It involves both a fruit salad in tomato ketchup and a regular vegetable salad with the potatoes and the oil providing the dressing. Okay, don't challenge me.
A salad needs to be a mixture of things. You're just a bowl of French fries is just a mixture of one thing. Don't mock my gestures.
Is it mixture?
He's making fun of my hands
fries
here.
With the French fries and the cheese on top. That's a salad? Tell me it's not.
No, not a salad.
Tell me it's
no.
fries. Anyways, Bill, So frequently, back to the side point that we're making, the people in my office have been saying, "Oh yeah, tomatoes are fruit." I'm going to throw out this data point to them that a tomato is a vegetable. Yes. Yes.
Legally a vegetable, yes. At least as of 1893, that could have changed. I don't know, but there's all kinds of really wacky tariff stories out there.
You want to know why? You want to know why it's wacky?
Yes, please.
Bill, this involves so much money.
Yes.
So, like incredible amounts of money.
Yes.
And where there is money, there are lawyers, and where there is a legal gray area, or when there is any kind of legality, there's courts, and yeah, people are willing to spend a lot of money to save a lot of other money.
So I was thinking about that. So here's another case. This came from early 2000s. X-Men toys, little X-Men action figures. Okay.
My world here, Bill.
All right. Yeah. I thought you'd like this one. So 2003 or so. There are tariffs for dolls, and there are tariffs for toys.
Yes.
Tariffs for dolls, 12%. Tariffs for toys, 6.8%. What
lower now? It's like 0% now.
Crazy. So, but what differentiates a doll from a toy? Because I think of dolls as toys, right?
Okay.
A doll, from an HTS perspective, represents a human being. So this company, Toy Biz Inc., took the U.S. tariff agency, whatever, to court to argue that X-Men are not human beings.
Whoa!
No, right? And they won. They got to classify them as like monsters or something other than human beings.
I didn't know that.
Completely antithetical to everything that X-Men is all about.
Bill, I have on my desk right now a still in the pack, a Toy Biz Wolverine toy from the 90s, probably before this. I'm seeing an entirely new light now, Bill.
That one may have been imported at 6.8% because Wolverine is a monster. Or
he's a monster.
He's
clearly not a human. He's a mutant.
I think Wolverine would chafe at the concept of being called a doll, right? He's not very doll-like.
He would not appreciate.
Yeah.
Insinuation. Wow. That. Take that lawyer more money. Well done.
What blew me away though is that it's actually like so that's the difference between 12% and 6.8%. We're not. There's
that's
enough
100%
money.
Difference.
Enough money in that to bother to pay a whole bunch of lawyers to take this to the U.S. courts. Like that is what caught my attention.
Yeah.
So there's another example of this which made much more sense, which was cotton, not for eating, Matt.
Cotton.
But in the 1930s, the U.S. started subsidizing cotton because there's all kinds of reasons to subsidize everybody back then, right? And then fast forward to I think it was like 1995 or so, the U.S. joined the World Trade Organization, and some of the member countries, Brazil in particular, got upset that the U.S. was subsidizing their cotton production, right? Because I guess that was against the rules of the WTO, and so they petitioned the WTO to get the U.S. to have to take away these subsidies, and they won. And so of course, the U.S. reduced the subsidies. I think didn't get rid of all of them because the cotton lobby is huge and there's a lot of money behind it, right? So there's this whole back and forth, and the U.S. basically on two separate occasions ended up buying off the Brazilian cotton industry. At one point, they started subsidizing the Brazilian cotton industry to the tune of like 140, 150 million a year. And then like a new farm bill came along and blew all that up. And they ended up then just making a one-time payment of about 300 million to the Brazilian cotton industry. Crazy.
Listeners, I am stunned. You can't, if you're listening on Spotify, where we are now, where I post these episodes regularly, you are not seeing me just in stunned amazement of Bill Shub's mastery and knowledge of HTS codes and the like deeper issues behind it.
Isn't
Now,
this great? This is such nonsense. Wait, I've got one more, and this is
Bill,
not. This is before HTS codes even existed, but it's a really, really fun one.
going way
Um,
back.
yeah, going late, but not actually. I started. This brought me on a tangent. I started asking ChatGTP about like ancient taxes and tariffs, and there's like a urine tax that Emperor Vespasian imposed on the Romans. We don't need to get into that stuff because it wasn't really tariffs. It was just taxes. But there was this one. I guess in the late 19th century, um, Germany was a big trade power and Russia was on the rise. And Germany wanted to try to tamp down on Russia's trading.
Sure.
And so they wanted to put a tariff on cows. But there's this whole most favored nation concept, which I guess was even back then, it was you're not allowed to like favor one country over another when you're talking about tariffs. So Germany wanted to put tariffs on cows to hurt Russia, but didn't want to hurt its other trading partners, and so it taxed specific cows differently. In particular, I got to find it. It's great. Let's see. Oh shoot, where did it go? Okay, here it is. It exempted large dappled cattle reared at least 300 meters above sea level and which have at least a month's grazing at a spot at least 800 meters above sea level. Can you guess? Can you guess which nation they were trying to protect with that one?
What, Switzerland?
Yes,
Yeah.
they didn't want to tax Swiss cows, so they came up with all this nonsense about very high elevations.
So now we don't care about it, right? Because it's part of like trade deals. So like in the U.S., right? There was NAFTA, it's now USMCA. We have most favored nations, right? Like anything produced in North America, we don't like it's all free. So that is actually an older concept that has been done away with, especially now. So that's fantastic information, Bill. I appreciate your dedication here, but we should like wrap up by saying, going back to your second point about like subsidies. Those are totally a thing even now, like still like recently. And one of the problems that the Trump administration has is that China subsidizes their steel industry,
Mm.
much to the detriment of the U.S. industry. Lots of reasons. The way that we have been getting around is by another quirk of trade law called countervailing duties, where we will prove to the World Trade Organization, hey, that country is illegally or like unfairly subsidizing their industries for whatever reason. So we are going to like put equal amounts of duties back on that steel so that our like homegrown duty or homegrown industry isn't in like isn't compete is competing on an equal level. So that's sort of like that's the whole deal around like this whole thing. But yeah, it's kind of wild.
Such a tangled web. I'm so
Yeah,
glad. I'm so glad I don't have to deal with it. I think you do actually have to deal with it a little bit in your work, right?
I deal with it a significant amount. Um, but there are people who like study hard, long, long hours of study to do this for a living. And it is of all of the many specializations that you can get, it has the smallest return on the investment. It is such a like hearing stories because I've known several customs brokers, hearing them like explain like, oh, I studied for like a year, 2 years to take this test, and like I'm like, yeah, you're getting paid about as much as I do. Like it's not a whole lot. Like I wouldn't do it, and it is the only test that I know of because tariffs change so frequently that when they wrote the test, if you can prove that between the time that the test was written and the time that you like took the test, if you got an answer wrong, you can prove like, oh hey, that actually like changed, then you get the answer right. Like there's a certain amount of like questions that you can argue your case for and get it right because like it's such an amorphous like deal. Yeah.
That's hysterical. Amazing.
Yeah. We did not. Okay, everyone, you got what your money is worth today. You got a lot of information you did not really need to know. Thank you, Bill, for the fantastic information that I really appreciate.
This was a whole lot of bullshit today, Matt.
Total bullshipping. Well done.
Awesome. Great talking
Thank
with
you.
you.
Before we go,
Oh,
Bill, point to part of the screen because we're going to do a thing on YouTube where like YouTube recommends you look at these videos. So just
oh,
point somewhere.
like right here?
Right there. Look at that
Right
video.
here?
It's fantastic.
I'm pointing right
Subscribe.
there.
There's a button
Oh,
to
okay,
subscribe
down
down
here.
there.
Okay, down here too. All right,
Yeah.
great.
Thanks, Bill.
That's the best ending to a podcast ever, Mac. Nicely done.